In this video, I'm going to discuss Azure Synapse Analytics. Azure Synapse Analytics performs data integration by supporting a large range of input and output sources, and making it simple to move data between these different technologies. It also acts as a data warehouse, storing data in SQL and Spark pools. It brings tools together for big data analytics, such as Transact-SQL and Apache Spark. Synapse SQL extends the standard TSQL to include support for machine learning models, combining serverless and dedicated resources to best suit your predictable and unpredictable data flows, and built-in functionality to handle data streaming. Synapse Analytics is a fully integrated environment that enables data ingestion from over 90 data sources. It contains an environment for code-free, drag-and-drop creation of extract, transform, load, or ETL data pipelines. This environment is very similar to the environment in Azure Data Factory. This equivalent environment in Synapse Analytics means that you don't need to spawn a Data Factory instance to build ETL pipelines. You can simply do it right in Synapse Analytics. The environments let you orchestrate logic through notebooks, Spark jobs, scripts, and several other methods. Synapse Analytics offers a single, unified experience at an organizational level. All administration, from data management to exploring the data to visualization, can be done within the same Synapse Analytics UI. Azure Role-Based Access Control secures the environment, and this common approach is easy to manage. Synapse Analytics offers monitoring tools that span Spark and SQL environments, and you can integrate Synapse Analytics with your CI/CD pipeline, so you can manage your SQL and Spark code lifecycles in CI/CD repositories along with the rest of your solution code. Apache Spark plays a big role in Synapse Analytics. It's a very popular platform for data engineering since it has sophisticated and efficient means for manipulating data. It's often used for preparation of incoming data to get it ready for downstream analysis. It supports machine learning by integrating such tools as Spark ML and Azure ML, and it enables ETL data pipelines to get data from ingress to final analysis. Synapse Analytics makes using Apache Spark easier by handling the management load for clusters, so you can focus on your code, and you can also take advantage of the integration with .NET for Spark. Synapse Analytics serverless Spark pools allow you to run Apache Spark in two modes. Spark notebooks can be run on the fly by data scientists for data engineering. This supports C#, PySpark, Scala, and Spark SQL languages. Spark jobs can also be set up, which can run your code on a schedule without human intervention for automated processes such as data pipelines. One of the nice aspects of Synapse Analytics is how it integrates SQL and Spark technologies under one consolidated experience. You can use both to seamlessly interact with your data lake by directly reading different files stored in your data lake such as JSON, CSV, and Parquet. Loading data between different SQL and Spark databases is made efficient and scalable. There are numerous industries that can use Synapse Analytics. A few of them are the financial industry such as banks, manufacturing, retail stores, and the healthcare industry. Data gets into Synapse Analytics via a linked service, which connects external resources to the workspace. There is no limit to how many linked services can be set up, and there are dozens of different source types that linked services can connect to. Once the data is in Synapse Analytics, it can be run through a pipeline, which is a data integration process consisting of several steps or activities, each which perform a particular action, such as copying data or performing some transformation on the dataset. Activities work with the data via an integration dataset. This is a reference to the data of a linked service. Pipelines are executed via triggers, which can be scheduled based on time windows or fired via an event, such as blob data being written to a storage location. Synapse Analytics contains a special engine called Data Flows, which lets you build data pipelines graphically without writing any code. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to create an integrated pipeline in Synapse Analytics. So I'm on my Azure home screen, And you're going to need a Synapse workspace for this. I already have one set up under Recent Resources. Mine's called Synapse 2255, and it comes with a storage account that's called Synapse DL2255. So let me show you how you create your own Synapse workspace. If I go to the Create a Resource button at the top left, click on that, it takes me to the Create a Resource page. And in the search box, I'm going to type Synapse Analytics. And in the drop-down, I'll choose Azure Synapse Analytics. On the Azure Synapse Analytics page, I'll click Create. Now I'm on the Create Synapse Workspace page, on the Basics tab. And under Project Details, I need to choose a subscription. It's already chosen the one I have. Under Resource Group, I can create a new resource group or choose one I already have. So I'm going to choose an existing one. You can leave Managed Resource Group empty. Under Workspace Details, you need to give it a workspace name that's unique. So something like Synapse 6677, just a random name. Region, choose your region. Under Select Data Lake Storage Gen 2, fill in an account name. You'll probably want to create a new one, so you can click Create New and give it a unique name. And what this will be is the data lake or storage account that I showed you in my recent resources. It creates it to save the Synapse Analytics details. So click OK. File system name, this is the container that it will create inside that storage account. So click Create New on File System Name and give it the name Files, and then click OK. Now on the bottom left, click Review and Create. At the top, it'll say Validation Succeeded, and then at the bottom left, you can click Create. Now, as I said, I've already created mine, so I'm just going to click Home at the top left. So now that you've created a Synapse workspace, you're going to have two resources. You're going to have the Synapse workspace, which you can see under my recent resources, and as I mentioned, a storage account. So open up the storage account, and when I click on my storage account, I'm now on my overview of storage account. I'm going to scroll down and click Containers. And on your containers, you'll see one container. You should see a container called Files, and that's where Synapse Analytics stores its data. I've created 3 new containers, Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3. And all 3 of these are empty right now. And we're going to be creating a pipeline that copies files from Stage 1 to Stage 2 as the first step of the pipeline, and then copies the same files from Stage 2 to Stage 3 for the second part. So I'm going to click Home at the top left, and under my recent resources, I'll click my Synapse Workspace. Now I'm on the overview of my Synapse Workspace, so on the right-hand side, I'm going to scroll down, and in the Getting Started section, there's an Open Synapse Studio box, and I'm going to click the Open link on that. And now I'm in Azure Synapse Analytics. So on the left-hand side, fourth button from the top is a button that says Integrate when you hover over it. I'm going to click on that. So just to the right, I get an Integrate section. And at the top right of that, there's a plus sign. I'm going to click that and choose Pipeline. This creates a new pipeline for me. By default, it's called Pipeline 1. To the right of the Integrate section is an Activities list. And this hierarchy has a section called Move and Transform. And if I open that up, I'm going to drag a copy data block to the right-hand side, which is our pipeline area. I'm going to drop it on there, and below it, I get some options. So first off, I'm on the General tab for the options below. And for name, I'm going to call this Copy Stage 1 to Stage 2. And then I'm going to click on the Source tab to the right of General, and I get below that Source Data Set, and I'm going to click the New button, which is below the Select. Now a blade pops out to the right called New Integration Dataset. In the search box, I'm going to type Blob, and I get an option for Azure Blob Storage. I'm going to click that and click Continue at the bottom. Now I get a Select Format option. I'm going to click Binary because we'll be copying the files. We won't be actually reading them. And at the bottom, I'll click Continue. Now I'm on Set Properties. The name, I will just call Stage 1. And Linked Service, if I open that up, I'm going to click New, and this creates a connection to our Azure Blob Storage. So if I scroll down in the new linked service screen that I have, just under Azure Subscription is Storage Account Name. I'm going to choose that and choose my storage account, which is, in my case, Synapse DL2255, but it'll be whatever you called it. And then at the bottom, I'll click Create. So that successfully created my linked service. I'm now connected to Blob Storage. Now I have an option that says File Path under Set Properties. And I'm going to click the Browse button just to the right of that. And I get a Browse blade. And I'm going to choose the Stage 1 folder because that's what we're creating a data set for. And I'm going to click OK at the bottom. Then on Set Properties, I'll click OK at the bottom. So that's now set up my source, which is going to be the stage 1 container of my blob storage. Now back here on the pipeline, in the options at the bottom for my copy data block, I'm going to choose sync. And then at the bottom, I choose a sync dataset. And again, I'm going to click new. I get the new integration dataset blade on the right. I'm going to choose Azure Blob Storage and click continue at the bottom. For select format, I'm going to choose binary and click continue at the bottom. For set properties, I will give it a name of stage 2. For link service, I'm going to choose my Azure Blob Storage 1. That's the same link service that I chose before because they're in the same blob storage. For file path, I'll click the browse to the right. And on the browse blade, I'll choose stage 2 and I'll hit OK at the bottom. Then for set properties, I'll click OK at the bottom. So I've now successfully set up a copy data step, and its source is the stage 1 folder and its sync is the stage 2 folder. So it will copy all the files from stage 1 to stage 2. Now I want a second copy data block. Under activities in the middle, I'm going to drag another copy data block and drop it in the area. And I'm just going to minimize activities and minimize integrate so we can see this better. So now I have 2 copy data steps. I'm going to connect them. You'll notice on the first copy data step, there's a green rectangle on its right. If I grab that and drag it, it gives me an arrow and I can connect it to the other copy data. So this means that the first copy data block will run, and when it's finished, the second copy data block will run. So in my pipeline, I'm going to click the second copy data block. And then in the options at the bottom, under General, I'm going to give it the name of Copy Stage 2 to Stage 3. I'll click the Source tab, and I already have a Stage 2 dataset, so I don't need to create a new one. So I'm going to pull the pull-down menu and choose Stage 2. So we're copying from Stage 2. Then I'm going to click the Sync tab, and now I do need a new dataset. So I'll click New beside Sync Dataset. And on the New Integration Dataset blade at the right, I'll click Azure Blob Storage and click Continue at the bottom. For Select Format, I'll choose Binary and click Continue at the bottom. For Set Properties, the name is going to be Stage 3. For Link Service, I can choose my Azure Blob Storage 1. And for File Path, I'll click the Browse at the right. And under Browse, I'll choose Stage 3 and click OK at the bottom. And then for Set Properties, I'll click OK at the bottom. So I've now set up a 2-stage copy. Now what we want to do is run this, but the first thing we need to do is publish it. So at the very top of the screen on the main menu, there's a Publish All button. I'll click that, and I get a Publish All blade on the right, and I'll click Publish at the bottom of that. So that's successful. Now what we want to do is create a trigger. A trigger is going to run our pipeline. Just above the pipeline window, fourth button from the left is Add Trigger, and I'm going to choose New/Edit. I get an Add Triggers blade on the right, and for Choose Trigger, I'm going to pull that pull down, and I'm going to click New. That gives me a new blade called New Trigger. I'll just leave the name as Trigger 1. The type is Schedule. Start date defaults to now. Time zone is UTC, that's fine. And under Recurrence, I'm going to set it to every 1 minute. And at the bottom, I'm going to click OK. And then under New Trigger, I'm going to click OK. Then at the very top, the main menu of the screen, I'm going to click Publish All. And on the Publish All blade on the right, I'm going to click Publish at the bottom. So that's publishing our trigger. And that trigger is going to run our pipeline every minute. So that means that every minute, it should take whatever's in Stage 1, copy it to Stage 2, and then from Stage 2, copy it to Stage 3. Now we can see whether our trigger is running by going to the left menu and going to Monitor, which is the second button from the bottom. And on the right-hand side, we have a Pipeline Runs table. And at the top of it, we see our Pipeline 1, and it is actually running. It says Status in Progress. So it's not complete yet. If I hit Refresh at the top, now I see it's succeeded. So I'm going to go back to Azure, and let's see what happened. If I click the Home at the top left, and I go to my storage account under Recent Resources, and then on the overview, I go down to Containers. And then under Containers, I click Stage 1. Now remember, we haven't put any files in Stage 1 yet. So that trigger would have successfully copied nothing. So what we'll do is we'll upload something. So I'll click Upload at the top. To the right, I get an Upload Blob blade, and I'll click the Browse beside the files. And I'm just going to choose any file that I have. I happen to have a C# solution file here. It doesn't really matter what file it is. I'll click Open. And then on the blade, I'll click Upload at the bottom. and it's uploaded that file. So now, at the top left of the screen, I'm going to click my storage account name just to take me back to the containers. And under containers on the right, I'm going to click stage 2. Notice it's empty. If I hit refresh a few times, it's still empty. So the results have just shown up. Now in stage 2, we have EventHubWriter.solution. If I click the name of my storage account at the top left and go to stage 3 on the right, I see it's also copied there. So we have success. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to integrate Synapse Analytics with Power BI to create visual reports. For this demo, you'll need a Power BI subscription that's linked to your Azure tenant, and you'll also need the Power BI desktop application installed on your local machine. So I'm starting in the Power BI website, and that's app.powerbi.com. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a workspace. So on the left menu, at the very bottom, I'm going to click Workspaces, and a blade pops up that says My Workspace at the top, and at the bottom there's a yellow button called Create a Workspace. I'm going to click that. I get a blade to the right that's called Create a Workspace, and it's asking for a workspace name. So I'm going to call it Demo-Workspace, and I'll click Save at the bottom. So that's created our demo workspace. Now what I'm going to do is use Power BI Desktop to load some data into that workspace. So here's Power BI, and the first thing that you see when you open Power BI Desktop is this Add Data to Your Report. And there's a box to the right that says Try a Sample Data Set. That's what we want to do, so I'm going to click that. I get a window that says 2 ways to use sample data. Click the Load Sample Data button at the bottom right. And now I get a navigator window with a folder on the left that says Financial Sample. Underneath that are 2 tables. One is called Financials, so I'm going to check the box beside Financials. And then I'm going to click Load at the bottom right. So what it's doing is loading that data and creating an empty report. And we're going to upload that to Power BI. So it's finished. So on the main menu at the very top, on the far right is a Publish button. I'll click that. And I get a window that says, Do you want to save your changes? And I'll click Save. Now it asks me to save it to a local location. I'm going to give it a name of Demo-Data. And I'll click Save at the bottom right. Now it asks me to publish to Power BI, and it asks me to select a destination, and I see my workspaces. And the one we just created is called Demo-Workspace. I'll choose that, and then I'll click Select at the bottom right. So it's now publishing that to the web, and it's successful. So that's all we need Power BI Desktop for. Now that we have that sample data set, I'm going to close Power BI Desktop. And now I'm back in the website, and you can see on my website I'm still on Demo-Workspace. But now there are 2 rows in the table on this page. There's a report and there's a data set. As I mentioned, it creates the data set and then it creates an empty report. I'm going to click the ellipsis just to the left of the type column for the demo data report, and I'm going to choose delete because we don't want this report for this demo. It asks me, are you sure you want to permanently delete demo data? And I'll click delete. Now I'm left with the data set. So this is what we want, since when we go to Synapse Analytics, it will want to load a data set. So let's go to Synapse Analytics now. I have my workspace open, and on the left menu at the very bottom, I'm going to click on Manage. And in the options on the left, under External Connections, choose Link Services if it's not already chosen. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a table of your link services. At the top of that, click New. Now on the blade on the right, that's called New Link Service, at the very top, there's a big yellow banner, and it's got a button that says Connect to Power BI. So I'm going to click that. And now the blade says New Linked Service Power BI. It asks for a name. I'm just going to let it default. It asks for a tenant. That's your Azure tenant that your Power BI is associated with. Workspace name, if you pull it down, if you've created the demo workspace, you should see it here. So I'm going to select that. And then at the bottom left, I'm going to click Create. So now I have a connection to my Power BI dataset, and I can create reports with it. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to click the third button from the top, which is called Develop. And on the Develop section, just to the right, there's a plus sign at the top right of that section. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to choose Power BI Report. On the right-hand side, I have a blade that says New Power BI Report, and it's asking me to select a Power BI dataset to create the report. So this is why we had to upload the dataset. I'm going to choose Demo Data and click Create at the bottom. And now we have a screen that shows a full report tool, and we can create a full report on this. So right now I'm just going to minimize the develop section for a moment so that we have more space. On the left-hand side, I have a report window, and on the right-hand side, I have filters, visualizations, and fields. So under visualizations, I'm going to click the button that's on the top row, second column. It's a stacked column chart. Click that, and as soon as I click it, I get a column chart on my report on the left. So I'm going to make it a little bigger. And now I can choose data for it. So on the very right-hand side under fields, I'm going to click on profit. And when I do, that adds the profit field to the values in the visualization. And I'm going to show the profit by country. So in fields, I'm also going to click country. And that will automatically add country to the axis. So now on the left, we have a chart on our report which shows the profit by country. So I'm going to save this by clicking on File on the top left and click Save As. I get a window that says Save Your Report, enter a name for your report. So I'm going to call this Demo-Report and click Save. The Power BI report is now saved successfully with Synapse Analytics. So I'm just going to close the Demo-Report tab at the very top. And just to show where that is, I'm now going to expand my resources pane on the left. And under Develop, you can now see there's a whole Power BI section, and I can see my workspace, I can see the Power BI datasets, and I can see my demo report. Now I'm going to switch back to the Power BI website, and if I refresh the website, I now see my report on the website under Demo Workspace. And if I click it, I can see the contents. So in conclusion, Synapse Analytics can connect to Power BI and act as a fully featured report designer, which synchronizes its reports with Power BI on the cloud. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to monitor pipeline runs, trigger runs, Apache Spark applications, and SQL requests, all in Synapse Analytics. So I'm in my Synapse Analytics workspace, and on the left menu, I'm going to go to the fifth button from the top, and it's called Monitor. I'll click on that. And this is the central place where you can monitor everything in Synapse Analytics. We're going to start from the top under Integration, just to the right of the menu, and the first option is Pipeline Runs. So let's click on that. These are all old pipeline runs, so let's create a new pipeline. So back to the menu on the left, I'm going to go to the Integrate button, which is fourth from the top. And just to the right of that, I get an Integrate section, and there's a plus button at the top of the Integrate section. I'll click on that, and I'll choose Pipeline. So it creates a pipeline for me called Pipeline 1. I'm going to rename it to Demo-Pipeline so we can recognize it. Now, under the Activities to the right of the Integrate section, the first option is Synapse. I'm going to open that, and I'm going to drag a notebook onto my pipeline area on the right. So in the properties below, the name is Notebook 1. I'm going to change that to Demo-Notebook. Then I'm going to click on the Settings tab, and on the Settings tab, it's asking for a notebook. And we don't have one yet, so I'm going to click the New button to the right of Notebook. So now it takes me to a notebook area, and I'm going to create a very simple notebook with one line, and it's just going to be Print Hello World. I'll choose a language on the menu at the top to be PySpark, and there's a section that says Attach To in the main menu, and it tells you to select an Apache Spark pool. Now we don't have an Apache Spark pool yet, so we're going to create one. The drop-down says Manage Pools, so I'll click on that. And this takes me to an Apache Spark Pool screen. And at the top of the screen is a New button. So I'll click the New button. And I get a blade on the right called a Create Apache Spark Pool. And I'm on the Basics tab. So under Apache Spark Pool Details, I have to give it a name. So we'll call it Demo Spark Pool. Under Node Size, I'm going to choose the smallest, 4 core. Auto Scale is going to be disabled. And I'm going to minimize the number of nodes to 3. And then at the bottom, I'll click Review and Create. At the top in green, it says Validation Succeeded, so at the bottom I'll click Create. So while that's deploying the Demo Spark Pool, I'm going to go to the menu on the left, and I'm going to click on Integrate, and I see that the Spark Pool is deployed. And now, on the right, I'm looking at my notebook again. So I need to choose an Apache Spark Pool, and we just created one. So if I pull down the Select Apache Spark Pool pull down in the main menu, I can choose Demo Spark Pool. I notice that it's not started, but when I click the Run Cell button to the left of my code, it says Connecting and Starting just above my code, and now Running. Okay, so that's completed. Now I actually paused the video because that took a couple of minutes for the Spark pool to start up, but you see that it's printed out Hello World. So we know that our notebook works. In the properties on the right-hand side, I'm going to rename it to Demo-Notebook. Now on the tabs at the very top, I'm going to go back to Demo Pipeline, and I'm going to click on my notebook box, and under Settings, below, I'm going to click the Settings tab, and notice I've chosen Demo Notebook. So now we've set up a pipeline and we should be able to run it. But before we run it, we need to publish it. So at the very top menu, I'm going to click the Publish All button, and I get a Publish All blade on the right, and I'm going to click the Publish button at the bottom. So just to review, we've created a pipeline with one step that runs a notebook, and we also had to create the Spark cluster that runs the notebook. So that's now all set up. Now going back to the menu in the pipeline area, I'm going to click Add Trigger, and I'm going to hit Trigger Now. So I get a pipeline run blade, and I'm going to click OK at the bottom. So now it tells me it's running the demo pipeline. Now we're running this so I can show you how you monitor that run. So in the left menu, second button from the bottom, I'm going to click Monitor. And now in the integration section to the right of the menu, I'm on Pipeline Runs, and to the right of that is the table of pipeline runs. We're currently looking at the triggered ones. If I looked at the top of the screen, there are tabs that say Triggered and Debug. I have it on Triggered, and we're looking at the triggered pipeline runs. The first one is Demo Pipeline, and you see it's in progress. If I click on it, I can see the one step, and the fact that it has a blue circle at the top right tells me that it's in progress. So I'm just going to pause this for a second and let it complete. Okay, that took just a little over 3 minutes, but it has completed successfully. So now what I can do is if I go down to the bottom in Activity Runs, I can click the activity name Demo-Notebook, and it takes me to details of this particular run. So here you can do a little bit of troubleshooting. You see at the bottom of the screen there's a Logs section. There's two tabs, Diagnostics and Logs. Under Logs, I can choose to look at the standard error, which gives me details about the run. And I can also choose that pull down and choose Standard Out. And we should see our Hello World here, and here it is, because the print sends to Standard Out. So we can look at logs here, and you can also download logs. You see there's a button on the right-hand side. And you can filter errors and warnings as well. So that's some ways in which you can monitor and troubleshoot pipeline runs. Now let's take a look at the next section. So if I go to the left, under Integration, the next option is Trigger Runs. So if I click on Trigger Runs, I have some old triggers in here, but you can see at the top of the Trigger Run screen on the right, there are several tabs for, you can look at all the triggers, you can look at only scheduled trigger runs, of which all the ones I've run are. You can look at tumbling window, these are the different trigger types. Storage event triggers and custom event triggers. Just going to go back to all again. So let's create and run a trigger and see it appear on this screen. So I'm going to click the Integrate button on the far left menu. So now we can see our demo pipeline. And if I go to the pipeline area on the right-hand side, the menu at the top has Add Trigger. So I'll click on that and I'll click New/Edit. I get an Add Triggers blade, and it's got a pull down that says Choose Trigger. So if I pull that down, I'll choose New. And I get a new trigger blade. And I'm going to call it Demo-Trigger. I'm going to leave the type to be schedule. Start date is now. Time zone is UTC. And recurrence will be every 1 minute. And I'll click OK at the bottom. I get a new trigger blade, and I'll click OK at the bottom. Now I need to publish it. So I'll go up to the main menu, click Publish All. I get the Publish All blade, and I'll click Publish at the bottom. So that's successfully published, so that should be running now. So let's go back to Monitor. So I'll go back to the left menu and click Monitor. And lo and behold, on the right-hand side with the trigger run list, I see the very first row is Demo Trigger and Status Succeeded. So the next thing to look at in the list just to the left of trigger runs, under Activities, is Apache Spark applications. Now you will see the list on the right-hand side, the very first row of the table has a status of running, and the pool name is Demo Spark Pool. That's the Spark pool that we set up for our notebook that runs with our pipeline. So it's already listing it as an activity. If I click its name on the left-hand side under Application Name, I will get details on it, and I can see logs at the bottom and diagnostics, and I can download the logs just like I could with the particular runs of my pipeline. I can also click the Spark UI button on the main menu for additional information about the Spark cluster. Now, going back to Activities on the left, The final thing we're going to look at is SQL requests. If I click on SQL requests, this will show every SQL request that's run. So to show that, let's start up a SQL pool, and I'll do a query and show you how it appears here. So on the left menu, I'm going to click the very bottom button, Manage, and just to the right of the menu, I'm going to choose under Analytics Pools, I'm going to choose SQL Pools, and on the SQL Pools list to the right, I'm going to click New at the top. So I get a blade that says Create Dedicated SQL Pool. Under Dedicated SQL Pool Details on the Basics tab, I'm going to fill in a dedicated SQL pool name. So I'm just going to call it Demo SQL Pool. I'm going to turn the performance level down to minimum and click Review and Create at the bottom. And then on the Create Dedicated SQL Pool blade, I'll click Create at the bottom. So now that's deploying. I'm just going to pause until it's finished deploying. Okay, so the status of our Demo SQL Pool in the table is now online. So now I'm going to go to the menu to the far left, and I'm going to go up to the second button from the top called Data. Click on that. And on the Data section just to the right, there's two tabs, Workspace and Linked. I'm on the Workspace tab. And under Databases on that section, I'm going to click the ellipsis on the right-hand side and click Refresh. And now there's one database. If I open up Databases, there's our Demo SQL Pool. So I'm going to click the ellipsis beside SQL Pool, and I'm going to click New SQL Script and choose Empty Script. I'm going to write a script to fail on purpose. Select star from Sum Table when I know that Sum Table doesn't exist. So now I'm going to click Run in the main menu. And as I expected, in the messages at the bottom, it says Invalid Object Name Sum Table. Now let's go back to our Monitor section. So back to the menu on the left, I'm going to click Monitor, and I'm on SQL Requests. And one thing I didn't notice before is that our pool is on the built-in pool. So in the main menu of SQL Requests, at the top, I'll click Pool Built-in, and instead of built-in, I'll choose our Demo SQL Pool. And we'll see the results. I actually did have historical results from other SQL pools. But the one at the very top is the one that we created. If I click More, I can see the request content blade pops up on the right, and I can see my select star from Sum Table. So I'll click Close at the bottom of that. And if I scroll the table, you can see its status has failed. From here, you can actually take a look at what queries have been run against SQL pools and their status, and you can get some more information. So in conclusion, the various Spark and SQL functional components of Synapse Analytics can be monitored in one central location, where you have access to logs, what queries have been run, and even more in-depth information. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the Azure Synapse Analytics Knowledge Center, which contains many datasets and samples to help you get going in Synapse Analytics. So I'm on my home screen in Azure, and for this demo, you're going to need a Synapse workspace. I have one under Recent Resources, so I'm going to click on that. And on my overview on the right-hand side, I'm going to scroll down, and under Getting Started, I'm going to click Open under Open Synapse Studio. So here I am in the workspace. And right on the main home page, on the right-hand side, is a box that says Learn. So I'm going to click on that, and that takes you to the Knowledge Center. So I'm on the Knowledge Center screen. At the bottom are three boxes. The first says Use Samples Immediately, and these are fully self-contained samples. We're going to take a look at one of those in a minute. The other box beside it is Browse Gallery, and this has a lot of different data sets and sample code that you can look at. And finally, the right-hand box says Tour Synapse Studio. If you click on this, then the wizard will step you through the different features of Synapse Studio. So I'm going to start off with Use Samples Immediately. I'm going to click that box on the left. And I get a blade on the right called Use Samples Immediately, and there's several of them. I'm going to click the one that says Query Data with SQL. And I'll click Use Sample at the bottom left. So immediately, I get a code window pop up that has my SQL in it. You see, on the left, it says Develop, and under SQL Scripts, it says Query Data with SQL. So it's generated this for me automatically. I'm going to click Publish All on the main menu, and I get a blade on the right that says Publish All, and I'm going to click Publish at the bottom. So that's complete. So now if I scroll down in the query, you'll see several queries are in here. So line 28 says Select Top 100 star from, and line 29 is an open row set. Line 30 is a URL to some blob storage. So this is going to read Parquet files. I can see at the end of that string on line 30, it says .parquet. So it's going to load all the Parquet files from some blob storage. And then on line 31, it tells it the format, which is Parquet. So this is going to load some external blobs. So let's run that. I'm going to just highlight from line 28 to line 32. And if I do that, it'll just run that SQL. In the menu just above my code window on the left, I'll click Run. And I get the results at the bottom. If I just scroll the results up a little bit, I see a table with a whole bunch of data. So that's come from the Parquet files. I can also click on Chart, and I can see that charted. So let's go back to the home screen. I'm going to go to the left menu, click the button at the top, and now I'm back at the home page. So on the far right, I'm going to click Learn again. Back to the Knowledge Center. Now at the bottom, I'm going to click Browse Gallery, the center box. So these are all sorts of data sets. I'm going to click the top left one, which is Bing COVID-19 data. And then I'm going to click Continue at the bottom left of the screen. So now I can see all sorts of data on a preview on the right-hand side. There's a big table. At the bottom left, I'll click Add Dataset. And at the top right of the screen, it tells me that the dataset was successfully created. On the left-hand side of my screen in the Data section, under Azure Blob Storage and Sample Data, I see Bing COVID-19 data. So I'm going to click on the ellipsis on the right-hand side of Bing COVID-19 data. I'm going to choose New SQL Script and click Select Top 100 Rows. So it generates that for me. And at the top left, I'm going to click Run just above the code window. And I get data at the bottom. I'm just going to drag the results window at the bottom. And I'm going to click on Chart under View. And so now I'm seeing COVID data in a chart. So just to show something interesting, let's change the query. So I'm going to minimize the results window, and I'm going to replace the query. Now this is pretty well the same query as before. I've expanded the select to be select star on line 2, and on line 7, I've added a where clause, where the result.country region equals worldwide. So I'm going to click Run at the top left. Now I'll expand the results at the bottom, and I'm going to hide the series that I don't want by clicking on them in the legend. So now I have a graph that only shows the confirmed and recovered cases worldwide. So in conclusion, the Knowledge Center is very useful because it can get you going really quick, and you can play around with some data and get to learn Azure Synapse Analytics. In this video, we're going to look at how PolyBase is used to query data. PolyBase allows the following data sources to be queried directly using Transact-SQL or TSQL: Hadoop, Cosmos DB, MongoDB, Teradata, Oracle, and SQL Server. All of these sources can be treated the same from the point of view of the person writing the query, because PolyBase's TSQL functionality normalizes the interface. Many SQL products support PolyBase. SQL Server 2016 version 13.x and later for Windows, SQL Server 2019 15.x for Linux, SQL Server Parallel Data Warehouse or PDW, and Azure Synapse Analytics. As briefly mentioned, PolyBase uses Transact-SQL or TSQL to query data. Importantly, this feature allows joins of SQL Server data with external data sources. Moreover, these joins have the same syntax regardless of the type of external source. This is a very powerful capability because in the past, joining two disparate data sources like this would have involved either moving data until they were in the same data source and then performing the join, or else querying the two data sources separately and joining the data via special code. Latest versions of SQL Server PolyBase allow many scenarios with many different sources, but two of the main scenarios that they all support are connecting with Hadoop, which is a popular, scalable, and relatively inexpensive big data storage solution, and connecting with Azure Blob Storage, which is an inexpensive and convenient storage for Azure services. Some other common scenarios are importing data from Hadoop, Azure Blob Storage, or Azure Data Lake into SQL Server or Synapse Analytics, and also exporting data to those data sources from SQL Server or Synapse Analytics. PolyBase does this by using what are called external tables, which are really references to tables in an external data source, such as Hadoop or Blob Storage. These external tables can be manipulated via TSQL in much the same way as local tables are. Thus, importing data, for instance, simply involves copying data from the external table to the internal table. Transforms can also be performed on the data as it moves through the external table to the internal table. In this way, PolyBase implements a complete ETL, or Extract Transform Load pipeline. PolyBase implements some tricks for maximizing performance. If interacting with Hadoop, some of the computations can be pushed to Hadoop, easing the performance cost on the SQL Server end. This is managed by a component called the Query Optimizer, which dynamically decides which computations are handled locally and which are handled by Hadoop. PolyBase scale-out groups manage parallel data transfer between nodes in Hadoop and SQL Server. It also scales the compute for external data operations. Note that this can all occur without the knowledge of the person writing the TSQL queries, because it's all abstracted from the actual query. Because PolyBase is integrated with SQL Server, it can be used with any SQL Server compatible third-party BI tools. It's compatible with Microsoft's business intelligence and analysis components. This diagram shows how PolyBase accesses an external data source. PolyBase can scale out to several compute nodes, each of which contains a data movement service or DMS. Using a Hadoop distributed file system bridge, each node can communicate with the data in the external data source, such as blobs in Azure Blob Storage. This parallel architecture means fast performance for data movement. So here's the PolyBase process from start to finish. First, you extract your data into text files. Perhaps your data is coming from an IoT hub. The events at the hub would be extracted from the hub and translated into files. These text files would then be loaded into the external data source, such as Hadoop or Blob storage. PolyBase TSQL is then used to map the external data source, and the data would be imported into either SQL Server or Azure Synapse Analytics. At this point, you can perform transforms on the data via the TSQL, although you don't have to. Then the data is inserted into the sync or final production tables. This process represents a complete extract transform load pipeline from extracting source data to inserting transform data to the final tables. So in this course, we've examined Azure Synapse Analytics. We did this by exploring integrating pipelines with Synapse Studio, visualizing data using a Power BI workspace, monitoring a Synapse workspace and exploring the Synapse Knowledge Center, and features of Azure Synapse Analytics and PolyBase. In our next course, we'll move on to discuss Azure Data Storage Monitoring.